Hello and welcome. I'm Vittoria Buccina. I'm the Assistant Dean for Enrollment Management here at Syracuse University School of Architecture. We're joined this morning by a number of our faculty members and a few of our alums, as well as our program managers for the New York City and the Syracuse program. And we're going to get started with Professor, well, actually, that's not true. I'm going to introduce our faculty that are here for those of you that this is your first time joining us. So we're joined by Professor Angie Ko. She oversees the MS Real Estate Development course in New York City. Professor Wang Fei oversees the MS Design Energy Futures here in Syracuse. And then they will introduce you to the individual faculty members that are presenting. I also want to throw a shout out to Lauren Mintier. She is the program manager here in Syracuse. And Esther Flame, she is the project manager in New York City. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Professor Wang Fei.
Hello, my name is Wei Wang, and I'm the MSDF coordinator. And it's my honor to introduce our first presenter, Professor Julie Larson. And Professor Larson has been teaching here for many years, and she's been teaching all the three programs, BArch, MArch, and MS programs. And she has been teaching the second research seminar for MS program and during the past year. So please welcome Professor Larson.
Thank you, Faye. All right, we're gonna have Roger share screen. All right, thank you very much for inviting me to talk today. Yeah, you guys can see the screen, right? Good, okay. So I'm gonna be presenting one of two research projects that my partner Roger Herbaly and I are currently working on and collaborating with CEMEX Global R&D on the two projects. But very quickly, I just want to maybe conceptualize frame our work. And I think the quote by Stan Allen is very poignant for us. He refers to the necessity of not only responding to climate change, but visualizing it. And we have an ethical imperative to respond to climate change with hard evidence-based research, but creative work that constructs new subjectivities, new ways of being in the world has a part to play as well. And the speculative project of developing an aesthetics of sustainability is not at odds with an ethical imperative, but rather it's necessary complement. So this is where some of our research lies in the kind of efficacy of visualization and experimentation that leads to, in our view, to innovation. So the next couple drawings and projects I'm just going to show very quickly help to kind of influence our work. And it's a lot of the work that I talk about in my research seminar as well. So how do we start to represent and model and rethink kind of landscapes that influence in how we perceive and engage with the environment? And we do that through potentially a spatial narrative. A lot of the work what you see here is, I think, influences our work greatly is by work like landscape designers James Corner, who really emphasizes ways that conventional planning suppresses movement and variability and flux, and that we should start to think more about how to think more adaptable and flexible. And Corner talks about this idea that landscape is really a measure of our cultural value and becomes a reflection of the character of society that shaped it. Another project that influences our work is work by conceptual artist Olafur Eliasson of Copenhagen. And this is a project called Ice Watch. He's really known for engaging with environmental issues, raising awareness of climate change by providing a direct and tangible experience of the reality of melting, in this case of melting ice in the Arctic. Which brings me to my another kind of tangible reality to climate change, which is our own project, Wieseleth Island. You're not flipping through any of these. Oh God. All right, not helpful. Keep going, keep going, keep going. That's Olafur Eliasson and his work. Keep going. Which brings me to another tangible reality, our project called Wieseleth Island. It's a floating concrete breakwater that initially was constructed in Cartagena, Colombia in 2016 and is now becoming an actual living shoreline in Cocoa Beach, Florida. No, go back. Wieseleth Island is at the intersection of advanced technology, emergent materials, and responding to the environmental changes, mostly rising sea levels, flooding, and mangrove depletion. And our design team poses critical questions that lead to new approaches for architectural design by unpacking the relationship between materials, methods, and the environment by not designing for existing materials, but designing beyond them. So we're actually in collaboration with Cemex Global R&D, which is the second largest concrete manufacturer in the world, and working with coastal engineers at Smith Group to start to rethink different kind of shorelines with their innovative floating concrete material and how we can use that to start to think about these vulnerable shorelines in new ways. So the long-term kind of vision of Wieseleth Island is to reestablish endangered shorelines and strengthen some of the more kind of successful and ecologically responsible protection infrastructure, which is mangrove forests. So in Cartagena, there's an island called Isla Grande, and it's has a protected lagoon, or at least it once did. And it was protected by a series of mangroves that really were the kind of main protection of the island. And now that they're seeing these mangroves deplete at alarming rates. The city had looked into typical kind of shoreline protection with concrete technology that you see here, but they weren't interested in these hard edges that typically do not allow for kind of synthesis with surrounding ecologies. They really are more like barricades to help with waves crashing into the shorelines, but are not really very resilient over time. And we really wanted to think about how to work with nature rather than working against it. So we wanted to reconceptualize those barriers and start to think about kind of infrastructure that could start to kind of envelop the nature and think about how to kind of work with nature. So we came up with the idea of Wieseleth Island, which really stems from Wieseleth. It's a kind of root system that has been encased in mineral matter. And then through chemical weathering and decomposition, the matter of the roots start to kind of take hold. So the intention was for us to think about the mangroves as a way to kind of be protected with our elements as they grew to maturity. And then over time, mangroves become so large that they start to kind of take over our structures and become the main flood protection of the edge rather than us. And so what you see here is a kind of idea, a conceptual idea of the islands aggregating into a larger kind of buoyant field. These elements literally are floating on water and can be kind of moved around in the water at different kind of patterns to create a kind of soft breakwater that attenuates the waves and protects the mangroves as they grow to maturity, along with being able to maybe potentially kayak in them. And this is a kind of just a rendering starting to show the kind of ambition here of thinking about these kind of shorelines and how they can start to be brought back, starts to kind of create a new kind of soft edge to protect the shoreline. And then what you see here is, you have to hit play. This is one of these elements. It's a floating element that's holding mangrove as it's growing. And it's encased in the concrete. And over time, what it does is the roots grow down, and then it starts to envelop the structure as it starts to make its way down to the seabed. And the element down below allows for a lot of kind of different kind of smaller ecosystems to form, like fish and different kind of species can grow and survive under there, such as oysters. And the mangrove continues to grow on top. And really quickly, what you see here is us actually our first kind of experimentation, putting the element in water, making sure that it would be able to stand in the water and float. And on the right, you see us constructing with some of the kind of innovative material, the concrete material that allows for this element to float, which is Cemex's Resiliency concrete, and to create the kind of buoyancy. And then just very quickly, a kind of newer narrative that's forming, which is really exciting for us, is that we are actually bringing this project to kind of a reality as a living shoreline in Florida. Keep going. In Cocoa Beach here. Keep going. And this is the park that we are going to start to implement a kind of prototype of Wieseleth Island along the kind of edge of the park. And it was actually just this past June during the pandemic that the stormwater utility manager, she inquired about our floating structure to potentially use as a kind of living shoreline around the kind of canals of Cocoa Beach. And this would help to start to restore some mangroves and bring potentially oysters to some of their waters currently, which are really low in oxygen. So they want to start to see how they can combine those ideas. And so we're looking into how to bring the island to Cocoa Beach through the idea of growing the mangroves as well as the oysters. And what you can see here is us diagrammatically starting to think about how to kind of take that kind of hard edge of the canals and start to create a more softer version of that, allowing for the floating structures to allow for the mangroves to grow. And these are just some elements of us retesting the idea at to see how we can start to grow these at and you can start to see the mangrove in the center actually growing. And this is a kind of idea of how we're going to attach it to the seawall. Keep going. And these are some of the early tests of us testing the concrete and looking at how we can see which ones are actually, which kind of concrete is actually working best for the oysters to grow on the elements down below. You can see that here, us testing that material. You can see that behind me as well. And this is just a quick rendering showing like what we anticipate and how we see it changing the shoreline over time. And then I have a quick rendering if we have a moment, just so you can see the actual element that we did in 2016, and then rendering. And so we're hoping, so the idea is that we are hoping that in this coming spring and through the next year, we will be hopefully implementing these along that park in the coming months with mangroves and oysters. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Larson. That's a wonderful presentation about just a one very long-term research and design project. And she's had a lot of very deep research, and also she's been kind of bridging between materiality, architecture, and ecology altogether. That's very, very wonderful. And the next presenter is Kavan Joy. And Kavan came to our MS program 5 years ago. And after graduation, he went to work at Perkins Eastman in Washington, D.C. And not long after that, and he received his registration. He's a licensed architect right now. And through our kind of MS program, and also he and is a wonderful kind of asset to our program. And he also came to many of our open houses, gave us wonderful presentations, but this time it's very unique, and he's going to show his journey in our MS program and with you guys, and also he can share more kind of experience after our MS study in here. And without further ado, please welcome Kavan.
All right. Thank you, Professor Wang, for your great introduction, and also it's my humble and it's my great honor to speak at this great event and to follow up with what Professor Larson has presented. So here, what I'm going to show you today is a brief introduction of my thesis project, aka the capstone project of my postgraduate study at Syracuse during 2016 to 2017. And before we step into the project, just as a brief introduction of myself. Yeah, as Professor Wang mentioned, I'm currently with Perkins Eastman for a little bit like over 3 years, and I'm based in I'm based in DC. But now due to the COVID pandemic, I'm like temporarily based in my hometown in China for now. So kind of like working on like new like global dynamics of remote working from China, but working with like half the US time and half the China time. Yeah, okay. And then start with my capstone project. I want to first talk about what is capstone. So as I understand, the capstone project for MS is a little bit different from the typical thesis project. It's really like a recap and a summary of what the students have learned throughout the whole program. So I want to start with this curriculum of the Master of Science program at Syracuse Architecture. As you can see, the program was divided into 3 semesters, and Professor Wang will introduce that more later. And during my first semester, I chose one design studio, kind of explore the possibility of multifunctional living and working module, and as well as applying that to multiple scales from the unit to the building, then to urban scale, even to a master planning, and of using the same like scenario planning idea, and then was connected with the architectural research seminar taught by Dean Michael Speaks and Professor Fei Wang. We were looking at the scenarios planning. We use the site of our design studio as a case study to kind of explore the thoughts and the history, and as well as the theoretical development of scenario planning. Then there's another like professional elective I chose to also relate back to the design studio is the urban housing taught by Professor Camel, and we were looking at the typical housing block and this housing residential typology. And because I'm from China, so I used the traditional courtyard house in Beijing as my case study. Then that's kind of some quick axon diagram. Then during the second semester, because I already got my 5-year BIAC from China, so I think it's kind of important for me to have one continuous research path throughout my graduate study. So I think the research process is very interesting. Then I chose Professor Sunning's course, Design as Research, and we explored quite a lot about the history of urban design, especially from the big 5 like modern architects, Le Corbusier to Siam to Tim Tan, then to the metabolism in Japan. And then here's some like final works of that course. Then again, we look at the housing in another course, because housing is not only my interest but also always one of the top topics in China, because like due to the more than 1.4 billion population in China, so housing is always the biggest focus here. So here is another course about housing and design and research on the typology of some like vernacular buildings throughout the world. Then then during the last semester, again I followed Professor Sunny on another studio. Like this project is already, like as I understand it, it's already like a collection of what I've learned during the first year at Syracuse. So I used this like scenario planning idea, used the modular system, this design tool set to kind of like furnish my like urban design project. So this one is part of the global urban studio, and we got the chance to visit Medellin in Colombia with Professor Sunny and met a lot of his friends, even the mayor there, and each of us made our presentation to the local universities, and we had a great discussion. Then finally it came to my capstone project. So Professor Fei Wang was my instructor, and we discussed early on during the project, and we said we really want to treat this one as a kind of application for me to collect what I've learned from this project, from this MS program, and what I really want to keep moving on, like in my future career. So yeah, like that was with that, like that, just a brief introduction of my learning path in Syracuse, and we will take a quick look at my thesis, my capstone project. So Professor Wang suggested me to like research on something what I was familiar. So we chose the new workers village in Shanghai. It's kind of like a public housing typology here, especially during the post-World War II period. And it's just some background of public housing or like social housing, and like this was also from my like urban housing professional electives during the second semester. Then some like brief overview of the workers village in Shanghai, and it was really a dramatic and fast development during 1915 1917, and like this single development was about 20,000 units for the modern families who kind of immigrated from countryside to the urban environment, to the urban context. Then zooming into the typical building type, it's kind of like some typical three-story building there. And with the kind of during the 20 years of development, there were like several types of different housing or built there, and kind of from the low rise to mid rise and to a little bit like high rise there, and with different FAR to meet the different demands during the different time. Then a brief overview of the major workers village in Shanghai. As you can see, like that didn't happen just in one place, but really throughout the whole city. Kind of here's the Yangtze River in this diagrammatic map. Also, here's the Huangpu River, and here's the Yangtze Delta connected to the Pacific. And kind of overview of some data summary of each major workers village, of the site area, the density, and the unit number, as well as the population. As you can see from the diagram on the right here, so like really from early 20th century to the end of 20th century, it was kind of like an explosion of the urbanization in Shanghai and also in some other cities in China. And in total, I think from 1930 to 1980, there was, I think, 2 billion square feet of public housing were built in Shanghai. Then there'll be like social issues background, some user study, yeah, and some like demographic studies here. Then we zoom into the kind of, then we try to select a couple of like major urban like social issues we want to address here, because as architects, even though we wanted to solve everything, but ideally like that, like that's really some utopian world. We couldn't address everything within one project. So we want to focus on these 4 categories: housing, commercial, open space, and public facility. And some mapping of the existing conditions, like different housing type built in different times, and the public and the distribution of public facilities. As you can see, there's some like uneven distribution there, and also maybe some shortage of K-12 facility, some some public library or senior living facility. Then we look at the ground floor retail, as well as some centralized markets within like this new workers village district. And lastly, the public space system. I think it was designed initially as a public space system, but with the time being, many, like much of them got vanished, and maybe like kind of replaced by the surface parking, as you can see here. There again, some zooming to each problems within the site. Because all those neighborhoods were built as the enclosed fenced neighborhood for a specific public-owned, state-owned firm. So they have the peripheral fence. So it was a huge block. So here you can see on the, it's about like 400 meter by 400 meters, like a mega block. But the access became like very limited. And parking is another big issue, because the private cars were not even a thing at the time of 1960 when it was built. Lastly, we just want to diagrammatically propose some strategy to kind of to respond to these social issues. Then some prototypes of renovation on both building and public space, and also some combination of those, and some diagrammatic axon views of each prototype. Then I kind of categorize this typology like prototypes into these 4 categories, like housing, commercial, public facility, and open space. So here, maybe we want to add an external elevator to improve to meet with the ADA requirements for the multi-story, multi-family building, and maybe the interior wall demolition to create the open floor plan, and some flexible module as part of the new penthouse on the roof. Then axon of this prototype. And again, the commercial, maybe we want some flexible module on the roof, or some elevated ground floor for the marketplace, or some sharing space by demolishing the interior walls to create some live-work multifunctional space, and the courtyard extension for some ground floor retail. And the third aspect is open space. Maybe we want to really create a 3D contour of the previously 2D ground. So can we explore the sunken open space, like a sunken skating tank or some elevated ground floor? Or can we cut through the ground floor of the existing building? Or do we want to connect several buildings with some elevated streets? Again, combination of these prototypes in the axon. Then public space, just some like cultural look building addition to the existing neighborhood. And with all that, it became like a system with existing condition as well as the proposed strategy. So that's the final, kind of like the final drawing of this project. I would say it's not a solid design, but we really want to use this as maybe like a manifesto of something to present the ideas of some like a modular, flexible, like method, as well as scenario planning for some like possible futures of this urban workers village in Shanghai. And finally, I wanted to conclude that with two paragraphs here by being Michael Speaks. It's like our contemporary world is like keep changing. So change is the only thing that doesn't change. So for us, for our architects, and maybe like most of the architects nowadays are still like focusing on addressing the existing conditions and how to apply the current technology into our building system or the urban environment. But as the students from MS program, maybe we should take a moment to look at the future and kind of to explore the possibilities in the future, and which was also one of the keywords in our program name, like design, energy, and the future. Yeah, so I would say I want to be a futuristic, but as well as architect, and MS program really provided me a great platform for me to explore my interest and like learn a lot of knowledge here. And if I have another 2 minutes, maybe I can show you a little bit of my most recent works. So here, sorry about the bilingual portfolio here, because I'm currently based in China, so I have to use some Chinese language material here in China for the business development here. So the first project here is a mixed-use project in Washington, D.C., and we collaborated with another. Do I still have a few minutes, or we need to move on to the next presenter?
Okay. Sorry, are you finished, Kavan?
No, I was just asking, do I have like maybe 1 or 2 minutes more, or should we kind of stick with our like kind of agenda? Then I can kind of like closing out now. Yeah.
Oh, I'll leave that to Faye and Victoria to moderate.
Probably 1 minute to talk about your professional experience, especially you. We are a post-professional degree but you are licensed architect, and also you are doing wonderful projects in Washington, D.C., also on multi-scales and on multi-programs. And that's should be something very interesting. Our students, they are new students. They are looking forward to learn from about you. So just something very quickly, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So here you can see from this rendering, this is a mixed-use project in Washington, D.C. And because like when I joined Perkins Eastman, I was part of the multi-family studio, and so I was doing a lot of like multi-family building there. But like starting from the second year, I joined this mixed-use project, which is quite interesting for me because it's not only like includes housing here. You can see there are 3 apartment buildings here, as well as there are the huge commercial complex that also like cultural plaza here. And I worked on this project as the initial team and kind of followed through all the phases from concept to pre-design to conceptual design, schematic design development, to the POD zoning approval, then to the construction document and permit document. Now we are kind of in a little bit like back and forth process because of the COVID, and the client lost its most important future tenants, so they decided to reprogram this building. And unfortunately, we are back in DD now to reprogram the cultural plaza here, because one of the tenants is the children museum, and they said their on-site market was really kind of hit by the COVID, and they are in a very poor economic circle now. So the building program might change, and but I talked with my boss, and they said it's like very normal for a mixed use project to get some back and forth. And yeah, but still it's a very interesting project for me to be involved in, especially during my early career. Then I can just flick through quickly on some drawings. Like this is the Revit produced wall sections, and also thanks to my introduction to beam course from Syracuse. Yeah, so I mastered a lot of Revit skills from Syracuse. Yeah, and some quick renderings there. And maybe like that's second but last project I want to briefly mention about, because this one is really kind of a connection between Syracuse architecture and Syracuse architecture's collaborator Shenzhen IBR and my firm Perkins Eastman. So thanks to the introduction of Professor Fei and Michael Speaks, we got the connection with Shenzhen IBR, and they brought us on board onto this very important convention center project in China, in Zhong'an district, kind of like the sub-center of Beijing. It will hold all the non-capital functions from Beijing. And that's the rendering from Shenzhen IBR, and we were the interior team for this convention center. You can see some renderings, and the rendering for the VIP room, and some rendering for the underground commercial corridor. So maybe I want to conclude here is I really appreciate Syracuse architecture to give me the great platform to learn, but also help me throughout my career. With the kind of the systematic training from Syracuse as well, my undergraduate, I got a chance to be exposed to many different types of projects throughout all phases, throughout all design phases, and also from different practice area like mixed use, housing, commercial, even interior, workplace. So I would finally say every graduate student from Syracuse, like undergraduate or postgraduate, we all should be very confident in our ability to kind of work in this architectural work. Thank you very much. And just let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you so much, Kavan. It's amazing to see what you're doing and your journey through the MS. So thank you so much for sharing that. I'm Angie Ko. I direct the Master of Science in Real Estate Development program in New York City. And I'd like to introduce next Professor Sean Amsler, who teaches within our program. He's taught, we've collaborated for a number of years on the New York City program, teaching, he teaches real estate and I teach design, and it's been a really wonderful collaboration. And so Sean's a core part of our faculty based in New York City. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Professor Amsler.
Well, thank you, Angie. Good morning, everyone. I'm just going to share my screen here with you so that you can see my presentation. Thank you for your time this morning. Can everyone see that okay?
Yes, thanks, Sean.
Okay, great. Well, I'll just take a couple minutes to tell you a little bit about my course here at the Fisher Center in New York City. So the course really is very interesting in that it covers a number of things. Within this course, we're gonna take a close look at the mechanisms through which real estate is developed, as well as the interaction of public agencies, developers, designers, the role that all of these entities play in the initiation, financing, and design of the built environment. Now, an important part of the course is the role that real estate development plays in the thoughtful growth of cities. Urban economies are very complex and interconnected. And so during this course, we're going to help you to better understand the inner workings of urban environments and the role that real estate plays in those environments. We also want to equip you with the ability to make informed design decisions and informed real estate development decisions. And so among the things that we're going to closely talk about here within the real estate industry itself are the zoning and regulatory issues that we all must work within. We're going to discuss the market environment. We're going to feature very heavily, and a very important pillar of the course is financial feasibility. But we're also going to get into things like deal structuring, negotiation, and investor pitches. And one thing that I should point out about this course is that it's very, very closely linked with the architectural design studio. And so in my particular course, at the same moment that's going on, the actual subject of your focus for the design studio, although you'll be doing the design in parallel to my course, at the same time, however, with guidance from me, you'll be taking a deep dive into the inner mechanics of it from a real estate finance standpoint and from a financial feasibility standpoint. And so the fact that you're able to simultaneously have those two parallel lines of thinking, the design and then the financial underpinnings. And I'm not aware of any other program where you're able to do that parallel study of the same project from two different perspectives in parallel to the depth that we do it. I'm not aware of any other place where you can do that. So one of the things that I want to talk about is that a very consistent theme throughout my course is value creation, how value is created in real estate. And it's not always what people think. Some of the most interesting things when it comes to value creation is in what you bring to it. You know, of course, the location has value, and of course, there are physical attributes that add value, but some of the most important aspects of it are what you bring to the table. And so very often, what is it that you bring to the table that adds something special to it? And we're going to talk about that, the creative element. And we're going to talk very consistently throughout the course about the role that high quality design plays in creating and enhancing value in real estate. And this is all too often an aspect which is overlooked, or in some cases it's an afterthought. But we're going to feature this very prominently as a part of the course, as the important role that design plays in creating and enhancing value. Another thing that we are going to feature very heavily and consistently, not just in my course, but also a consistent theme throughout the entire degree program, is the importance of sustainability and resiliency. Both of those are themes which are integral, and they're integral not only to my course, but they're integral throughout the entire program. So we're gonna that's going to feature very heavily into our discussions. Another thing that we're going to talk about is what I like to call and what some people like to call is the triple bottom line. So real estate development is often, unfortunately, utilized as an instrument for wealth concentration at the expense of communities, citizens, and the environment. However, when thoughtfully channeled, it can also make a transformative positive impact on local neighborhoods and on the everyday lives of the people who inhabit these neighborhoods. This course, among other things, will delve into how we can develop parts of the built environment, how we can develop schemes and facilities and structures and things that end up becoming an enduring part of the urban fabric in a way that make a positive impact on the surrounding community. Properly executed, real estate development can also reinvigorate local economies, alleviate inequality, create jobs, enhance the quality of life of local residents, promote social justice, and encourage vibrant mixed-use neighborhoods. However, the ways that all of these things can be achieved are really limited only to your imagination. Now, in my mind, and I was talking about this with Angie yesterday, in my mind, one of the most wonderful assets of this program is that it's New York City based. The opportunity to really be at the convergence of real estate and design in a place like New York City is an extraordinary opportunity. Right at your fingertips, you have a concentration of extraordinary projects, which is probably almost unparalleled, which is seen in very few places. New York City is almost like a library of great design ideas. And furthermore, when you think about the fact that real estate is just one part of the very complex urban fabric that we all live within, New York City, in a way, is kind of like a laboratory for experimenting with new approaches for tackling the realities facing urban ecosystems everywhere. It has often been said that New York City is where the future comes to audition. And it's very true in that some things that are tried here end up being utilized elsewhere. An example of this, of course, is the famous New York City zoning resolution of 1916, which afterwards was emulated very similarly by many cities elsewhere around the world, really. So it is the opportunity to be here and study real estate and study the convergence of real estate and design right here is really unparalleled, I would say, almost anywhere else in the world. Not just because of the projects, but also because of the fact that New York is just this amazing urban laboratory. And then if you add to that the fact that New York is at the very crossroads of international finance, okay? People from all around the world come here to get their real estate private equity funds financed by big institutions. And in New York, you will find people doing projects everywhere from China to Tel Aviv to Brazil to you name it. I mean, you're really just at the epicenter of everything here. You're at the crossroads of everything. And that's one of the things that makes New York such an exciting place to study real estate. So another thing that I'll say is that this course, while it is admittedly real estate focused, I would say that this course is of interest to anyone wishing to shape the built environment of the future. And your career path upon completing this program and upon completing this course could play out in any number of ways. This course will serve you well or will equip you in a number of ways, right? So one of the things that we want to really emphasize in this course is that urban economics are very complex and interconnected. And we want to help you to understand the inner workings of urban environments and the role that real estate plays in them. And in effect, we want to basically equip you with the ability to be informed decision makers. We want to equip you with that ability. So upon completion of this course, you will have any number of possible career paths available to you for which this course will serve you very well. So some people may choose to really pursue a dedicated path really focused on development. Other people may decide to pursue a path of city agencies, even into something like inclusionary housing or community reinvestment. Other people decide to go a decidedly more real estate finance type of approach. Some people find that their passion is in things like brokerage or lending, and others find that their passion lies in international investment. Even those who choose to stick very strictly to the design path will find that having had this real estate course at the convergence of design and development, they find that it serves them well later and that it helps them to have this holistic perspective. I've had students come back to me, years later after having taken a very similar version of this course for the undergrads and say, even though I've been an architect for 5 years or 7 years, or even though I've been working for the city, there are things about this course that come up routinely that years later, they find it relevant and helpful to them. So I cannot emphasize enough just how beneficial it is to be in New York. I mean, in my own career, as of recently, I've been able to work on hospitality projects in Italy and Brazil. I have a client, a development consulting client who's a nonprofit in Pittsburgh. I've worked on multifamily projects in Miami. And now I have an upcoming project in Costa Rica. So the ability to really have that global reach and really be at this amazing crossroads that New York City is, I think it's really quite unparalleled. So it's an exciting course. It's one of my favorite courses to teach. And so I look forward to seeing you all. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Amsler. And thanks for the wonderful presentation. I think that's a very attractive course for everyone to take. And next presenter is Professor Roger Herbaly. And he's been teaching with us for many years. And also he's been teaching for all the 3 programs, BArch, MArch, and MS programs. Also, he has taught several times the MS research seminar, the 2nd research seminar on materiality. So please welcome Professor Herbaly.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. You should see a slide now. So Professor Larson already presented at the very beginning, and I'm collaborating with her on many projects, and I would like to show you guys another project that's also a collaboration with Samex Global R&D, but takes a little bit of a different approach. And just to give you a little bit of an idea of the breadth of our work, and then perhaps give an idea of how this plays out in the MS research class that we are both teaching. So, you might have wondered why use concrete in a context where this is probably the least liked material on the planet. But the reality is, for many reasons, right, for its historic reasons and its connection to modernist housing projects, but also most recently in terms of its connection to the idea of the environment and its kind of implication of its literally gray energy that's embedded in it. But for us, a kind of guiding principle is really this quote by Jeremy Gregory that says, despite criticism, concrete is still crucial to our civilization. Instead of abandoning the most important construction material in human history, we ought to expand our understanding of it and utilize its full potential to enable sustainable development. And so for us, it's really trying to think about, like, how can we rethink the systems that we have? Meanwhile, we're also developing new systems, but reconsidering the systems that we have to find ways to actually deploy them better. And for that, of course, there's a lot of material expertise needed, but also fabrication and design expertise. And so we have sadly, at the moment, this is stopped because the Autodesk build space, which you see here, which we have a residency at in Boston, is closed due to COVID. But we're working on like super thin concrete elements that are kind of cast together with digital fabrication technology and robotics. So you can see here a kind of idea of folding concrete elements into these kind of complex shapes. And it takes on a little bit of a different route than 3D printing, which we have our own reasons to think that this is a valuable approach. So it's about not just about generating new forms, of course, the kind of excitement of new possible forms made out of concrete, and of course the kind of fabrication techniques that go into this. But simultaneously, we're also starting to think, well, if this is a kind of new formal condition, what could that ultimately also mean for ideas of systems that we could develop? So our approach is a little bit from working from the pavilion kind of into a more deeper system, if you want so. But at first, of course, we need to build a lot of prototypes. So here you see some of the prototypes that we were developing, starting to think about how these things can be connected together, how they can become structural. And all that happens at a relatively controllable small scales, with the intent then to scale up. Again, this really is work that needs to, it might seem very simple here. Actually, especially the robotic technology is, of course, somewhat advanced, but it also needs a lot of material science that's embedded in this, and this wouldn't be possible with actually collaborating with other people that can bring that knowledge to the table, in our case, Cemex. We were stopped by the pandemic in the development of the project, so that didn't stop us. We basically decided, well, okay, if it's not concrete, what else could it be? Let's build the whole thing out of cardboard, which, quite frankly, we were planning anyhow, because we needed to develop the kind of system in a way that we could understand how the pieces come together. So the idea of a kind of one-to-one mock-up of an element was there at the very beginning. But since we couldn't do it in Boston, we moved it to Syracuse, to Slocum Hall. And there we have a kind of beautiful red carpet where we meet for lectures, where we have events that are really central to the school. And so we thought it's a great idea if the school is empty otherwise, that we can at least have some kind of design work that's within the space as a kind of stand-in for the work in general and create some excitement around that. So you'll see this is going to be ultimately developed in concrete. We're working on that to change this from a kind of material transformation, a metamorphosis from the cardboard into the concrete based on the elements that you saw before. Here's some other shots. Starting to think about how the geometry actually relates to each other, how the pieces ultimately be connected together. And obviously there's a kind of transformation then from the system in concrete is much, much more complex, the way it's casted out and all of that. But this is a way to kind of approximate our ideas. And the course that we teach, that Julie and I teach, really picks up on this idea that none of those things are actually possible without really collaborating with people that have other knowledge, and that people that have other knowledge might not just be your standard engineer, might not just be your standard consultants that you might have in projects, but those people might be contractors, they might be people from the material lobby, and we are trying to get those people to the school to provide both lectures, but also workshops to provide a better understanding of a kind of really large arc, which we're interested in, from the kind of extraction of the material from the ground all the way to what we as architects ultimately do with the materials and how we design. And again, it's fundamental to us to bring in people from a very wide range of expertise. So we bring in other architects that work on specific projects. In this case, one architecture that works on large shoreline projects that we're working together with the students in a workshop. But we also bring people in that work for companies that shoot satellites into outer space, so we can actually measure the world, so we can actually understand what kind of matter we have on the planet. So that we know how we actually can move this matter around, or how we are moving the matters around, and what the implications are for all of that. So you can see it's a kind of very broad understanding and very zoomed out on the one side, and on the other side, very, very specific. And we think that is specifically in an MS class where you already have your architecture, most of you have your architecture degree, and you kind of understand everything at the kind of scale of a normal building, to really zoom out and understand the kind of larger conditions is a very useful, important opportunity to also rethink perhaps your own work that you've been doing so far. And then, as a kind of exercise in this little research, we create a little research environment in this course, where we look at kind of material flows, better understanding what are actually the implications of the extraction of the material, the processes that the materials are going through till we kind of create from matter an actual material that we can use. What are the implications if we think about like tweaking these processes, and all the way to a kind of really kind of a simple, small little design project, but that really helps us to kind of create this grander arc. So it's not so much just about the design project at the end, but about the implication of the entire process, from the kind of extraction of the matter out of the ground to the material, to its ultimate application and its implication for ultimately society, the environment, and of course also for the development of your own ideas, your own goals that you might have, and aspirations that you also might have within your own MS education. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Roger. It's so exciting to see your research work, and Julie's as well. Next, I'd like to introduce Abingo Wu, who has been teaching with us since 2018. And Abingo teaches in both the MSDEF program as well as in the BARC program. And Abingo has been teaching in the first research seminar. So Abingo, please go ahead and share with us a bit about your work and your class.
Thank you, Angie, for the introduction. I'm going to share my screen, so you can, oh, just 1 second. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, thank
Okay.
you, Bingo.
Sure. Let me do the full screen. All right, so welcome everyone. So I'm going to briefly talk about my own research as well as the course I teach for the MS program today. So my main research area is the history and theory of global 20th and 21st century housing approach and urbanism. So basically I look at this, how the state, the market, designer, and users co-shape housing practices. Previously, I have done projects on social housing in different regions across the globe, as well as the homeless sheltering research and design for the Bay Area in California. So my dissertation research look at housing and life in Guangzhou villages by the city. So I document and analyze their housing typologies, trying to understand how they designed, how they built, how they live and manage their new housing constructions. And this speaks to or parts of my general interest of the rural built environment in China, which is a very unique practice under the urban and rural divided framework. So this is one of my current ongoing projects. I particularly look at the social group, what I call village middle class, and their housing practices in countryside China. So I'm trying to understand how the middle class mobilize the resources in Chinese countryside and come up with new housing approach, which not only about new housing typologies, but also new management method, as well as new housing tenure in rural China. My other ongoing research project is looking at the P2P collaborative housing at the age of sharing economy. As you can see here, I'm looking at how people take advantage of different sharing platforms such as Airbnb, HomeAway, etc., to create new ways of housing practice and come up with new norms of living. So this is the 4 particular geo contexts I'm looking at. So I collect online housing practices and create housing typology atlas about it. And in conjunction with the on-site ethnographic case studies, while the pandemic stopped most of the field work now, I'm started looking at how the different platforms reposition themselves according to the pandemic situation. All right, so this is briefly about my research interests and my research projects. This is the course I'm going to teach with MS program, which I have been teaching for years now. So this course is called Architecture Research. It is introduction of architecture research. It offers a critical overview of architecture research through exploring its via practice. So if you look at the brief structure here, you see this course has 3 critical components. In the first part, we will discuss what architecture research is. It offers a broad understanding of how architecture research is undertaken in different fields. For example, how it's undertaken in social science and humanity, in building science and engineering, as well as in the practice setting. The second part, we will learn and exercise a set of research methods ranging from very classical tools to emerging techniques. While we're learning of these methods, you are required to critically think and creatively imagine how architecture research methods inform and are informed by other disciplines. And the last part, it will end with a final project, which is basically a project to help you to rethink about what you have learned from this class, as well as to prepare you as the first step, a literature mapping for your thesis projects. And following, I'm going to briefly talk about the basic component of this class. So the most important skeleton of this class is that you will have lecture from me, and then you have to do reading, and then we will do a lot of discussion based on both the thematic lecture as well as the readings. And the next thing very important is that you will learn about the basics of research, as small as a citation style, citation tools, as critical as the components, like whether your project needs a RIB review or human subject protocol, text, and etc. You will also learn about how to use library resources and database online. So you will learn about what is the organizational logic of the library resources, where is what kind of periodics, and then what is the journal related to your topic, what is a magazine that can inform you some expansion about your knowledge and also your interest topics. And you will also learn about the different organization of database and how those literature is organized and how you can effectively search what you need. And we will invite faculties to talk on our project to just like let you understand more how a research project is framed, developed, and finally framed to tackle specific topics or issue. So during this process, we will visit COE, the Building Center of Excellence in Syracuse University, and we will have lab tours of some of the faculty members' labs. And we will also include office tours. Sometimes it's local, sometimes we'll join your studio field trips and then become like a field trip plus office tour in other cities. And you will have workshop, as Roger mentioned before. Some of the workshop is actually correlated to Roger's class. Some of the workshop is offered by internal faculty members. Some of the workshop is by me. And of course, we will also have expertise from outside to give us workshop. For example, last semester, we have a Lemma AR workshop collaborated with TikTok engineer Ren Ze, who had the architecture background to understand and learn something about this new AR projects. And finally, I will talk about your final project, as I mentioned before. So the final project is a mapping of existing literature based on a specific topic you're interested in to develop it for your thesis project. So this is just like a few example about the final turnout. So this is a project by Yamu, and then she did about the Adobe or the Earth development tracing and trying to understand how her project positioned in the bigger picture of the utilization of Earth as a building material. And this is a group collaboration project trying to understand the evolving interior urbanism and how that talks to the larger city contact urbanism. And I will end with a picture of the review of this final project, as well as this is my favorite review place in Slocum Hall. So look forward to work with you, and then we may probably have the review here again. All right, thank you.
Thanks so much, Bingo. I think that concludes our presentations. And so I'll pass the mic back to Victoria.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you for our wonderful presenters. A few of our faculty have departed. They had to go and teach class. But for those of you that are still here, and if you have questions, we would love to hear them. You can either mic in, introduce yourself, raise your hand, and or type a question for us in the chat. I know that we shared an awful lot of information with you today.
Hi, I would like to ask a question.
Yes, please.
Sure. My name is Kiana, and I've been admitted to the Master of Science in Architecture, DEF. And currently I'm taking also 2 classes at the school just to familiarize myself sort of as a part-time student. But my question is more toward the projects that Professor Roger and Professor Julie were doing. And that's mainly like my interest in basically attracting me to the program was technically like sort of intersection of the architecture, material science, and biology. And I was wondering for a master's student with sort of this short period of this program, what are the extents of the research that I can do personally, and if one person is more interested in one certain topic, can they sort of shape their education around that to sort of start and end to focus on one topic and one issue, and if so, what are the paths toward sort of reaching that goal? Thank you.
So Professor Wang Fei, do you want to talk a little bit about the courses that are offered and how students do research? And then Professor Herbaly, maybe you can talk about how you have students that work with you and Professor Larson on projects.
Yeah, I can jump in very quickly, just very briefly. And I think that's a really, really good question. And also from the example from Kavan, our alumnus, and you can see all the courses, all the 4 electives he was taking was really on his own topic on housing and urban issues. And our goal is really to help you to find your own interests to develop and thoroughly. And your final capstone project is really on your topic. And I just did a summary on our kind of new MS capstone projects during the past 5 years. And we have roughly 5 or 6 categories. We have students interested in immateriality, also urban issues, and also data analysis, and also on architectural typologies. And they are very diverse. And then from day one, probably you have a topic, and some of you guys, you don't have a topic in the beginning. And this is how our program is trying to help you to shape you, especially starting from the first MS studio I was teaching, and also first research seminar Professor Wu was teaching, to give you a little bit tips, and also to give you the idea of how broad architectural research can be, and what are the research methodologies and you can learn from. And in the end, is really to help you to generate your own subject and your own kind of research ways of working. And then the second research seminar is on materiality. And then at the same time, and we have students, they are taking electives outside the school or within the school. That's possible to be replacing the open elective as well. Every single course in the university you can take. And we have students, they are taking the courses in the management school, and also School of Education, and so also in the ESF, the landscape department. And as everything you are taking, and we will help you to fit in your interest. So this is not a professional degree. You have a lot of required courses, and we have 4.5 courses, they are elective. So, and also our professors, we have amazing faculty members, and also we are all very diverse, and we are very international, and we will take care of you. And in the end, and you will find your own kind of a external expertise to help you. And also we will have a lot of discussion through the final semester, and relate to everyone. They are very different. So that's your own topic. And Professor Herbaly, do you have anything to add on? Or
yeah, I mean, I could just perhaps say 2 things, perhaps. One is you can just work with us, right? We always have students that work with us on our project. That's the most ideal version, because then we do what we want to do. But on the other hand, of course, like the idea of the course that we teach is not so much, it's not like, if you think about a kind of undergraduate course, there's a methodology, and that methodology is kind of trying to provide you a way to think, perhaps in a very described manner. It's really about kind of shaping you. In this course, it's really about providing perhaps an idea of how you could establish a process. So it's much more about like a kind of methodology that we go through that mostly is actually impacted by your own interests. So, of course, there is a kind of idea of what you should have at the end. There is an idea of where we start, how this method works. But so, for example, the materials that the students pick, the kind of context that they explore through those materials, that's all just the students. It's just really brought to them. And it's a way through the eyes of materials, perhaps think about the larger interests too. So I think the moment where, for me, it gets really exciting is when I see that some of the stuff that the students are working on in the research seminars kind of starts to really filter into their thesis, MS thesis work and their design studio work. And of course, most ideally, even afterwards in their careers. But that's the moment for me, it gets really exciting. And by that, I don't mean like, oh, you looked at bricks and now you're making something out of bricks, but actually much more interesting to me, or, glass, now you're making something out of glass in your thesis, but much more if I see a kind of percolation of a methodology that you developed, a way perhaps to grasp the larger breadth of a project, a way to think about how you can engage other knowledge into your project, how you can reach out and make these connections. Because I think at the end, that's really where you generate, the idea of, perhaps a little bit similar to what Professor Amsler was talking about in relationship to what actually creates the added value. I don't think it's so much the capacity of one way to do something, or you learn one way to do something. I think the added value in all of this is your capacity to build teams, to know how you can garner knowledge for your own interests, right? And how you can bring this to a larger group, whether it's be a Perkins of Will or any other bigger firm that you might work in afterwards, or with other people that you're interested in collaborating. So I think the added value comes from actually making new connections. That to me is the added value, and the sudden having an in-depth conversation about architecture with somebody that works at Planet that actually is really interested in moving satellites around the world. That to me is a potentially added value, because it teaches us a different view on the way we understand our built environment. So that's at the core of it. I don't know if that describes. But again, like most ideally, you just come and work for us.
Thank you so much, Professor Hubley and Professor Wong, for those very insightful responses. Lauren, would you like to answer this next question about the MARC upcoming fairs, and then the career fair that we have coming up next week?
Sure. So all students, MS and MR, can use our dedicated career services office here at in Slocum Hall at Syracuse University. So it's not exclusively for MS or MArch, but it is dedicated only for School of Architecture students. So we do specialize in architecture careers. And so we do have a long-standing relationship with a lot of our alumni and able to give you the best opportunities available out there. I know most of our students actually do utilize career services to gain employment directly after graduation. But also once you're part of our family, you're part of our family, and you can come back and use the career services office whenever you are looking for a new job, or whether you're hiring in the future and you're part of that human resources team to try to recruit additional students. We do recommend that all of you do attend our career services orientation and financial aid services presentation on the 23rd, which is next Tuesday, so exactly a week from today, at 9 a.m. Our career services director will be there, as well as the financial aid graduate advisor in the school, Syracuse University. And then in general, our courses, at this point, we are intending to be fully open in the fall semester. We are gearing up to do in person, and we're hoping to get back to a sort of normal. However, of course, as things change, we will let students know, but the university is preparing at this time to go fully open. in the fall semester. I do believe that there will be some options for some hybrid opportunities and learning, just because we don't know how the world situation will be. However, as I said, we'll be keeping students apprised of that as we know more.
Great, thank you so much, Lauren. I know that a couple of our faculty members have to go because they're teaching class at 10:30. However, we're still here to answer questions. So if you'd like to mic in or ask us a question, or you can even write to us, I will put in a number of email addresses that you can use to write to us as well. But please feel free to mic in or type.
Victoria, I have to get going, but I just wanted to say that thank you very much for everybody to join. Very much looking forward to the future, hopefully working together with all of you. And feel free to reach out, at least that's true for Julie and me. You can find our email on the school webpage. Just feel free to send us an email with any questions that you have anytime. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your generosity of your time, Professor Hubley. Good. Any other questions that you may have? Good. All right, so as I wrap up, if questions pop up in the box, unlike other apps, I don't get to see that anyone is typing. So I always do this and then a question pops in, but I'd rather do it and just be on our way here. So again, congratulations on your admissions. We are super excited for the opportunity to hopefully meet you this coming fall, either in New York City or here in Syracuse. We have a number of additional upcoming events and I popped that link up. We have an MARC one tomorrow morning. We'll have coffee with the dean again. We will have the career service financial aid presentation. And then, always, as Professor Hubley said, reach out to us via our personal email addresses. You'll notice the faculty page. You could reach out to anyone there. Thank you so much for all of my professors and your time, for our 2 alums that came and visited. Sina, I know that you didn't say anything, but if you have a couple of parting words for us, that would be wonderful to hear from you.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Victoria. I'm a recent graduate. I graduated in December 2020, and most of the times I studied in MSDF program, was sadly part of COVID. But I believe that we managed that process really well as well. And the online classes were still really interesting, and we were incorporating a lot of tools to deal with that. And during my studies, I focused on urban design. And for my thesis, I came up with a prototype regarding that. And the school was incorporated like everything that I needed. I took classes from civil engineering department as my elective courses. My colleagues just decided to take electives from architecture department, or some of them even collaborated with SUNY ESF. And it was really resourceful for me, and my overall experience in Syracuse was great. And we participated in Solar Decathlon Challenge and spent our voluntary work time, our weekends, on a competition, which we got the honorable mention as well. So the school is actually great at guiding you at such things. And if you don't have a topic in mind, because I had an overall idea when I started the program, but I didn't know where I was going. And they directed me pretty nicely so that I can come up with a clear thesis subject.
Thank you so much. We have another presentation, MS-DEF, MS-RED, combined presentation coming up the first week of April. So if you've not attended one of our information sessions and you really want to understand the overview of how the coursework is laid out, the certificate of advanced study that you could receive in sustainability through our Whitman School of Management, all of those details details will be laid out in that meeting. I would like to tell you that I know the exact date of it. It is on April 7th. That'll be the final Master of Science presentation. And then, as always, your admissions decisions are due to us by April 15th. If you have been conditionally admitted, your conditional admit might be based on the fact that we're awaiting financial documentation from you, or that you have to register for the English Language Institute. Have any questions about that, I'm happy to answer those questions via email. Again, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for my wonderful colleagues who joined us here today. It's always exciting to see the admitted students and get a chance to know you via this process. And as I said earlier, hopefully we'll get a chance to meet in person in August. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Congratulations again. Bye.
Thank you, Victoria. Congratulations, everyone.